Apropos of the events of this past week in Charlottesville, I wanted to share with everyone the history of Confederate monuments in the country. So take a look at this.
According to a 2016 report from the Southern Poverty Law Center, at least 1,500 symbols dedicated to the Confederacy exist in public spaces in the U.S. They include statues, flags, and holidays, and are mostly in southern states. Around 700 of these symbols are monuments. Groups like the United Daughters of the Confederacy, which in the late 1800s consisted of mostly white women, built monuments to preserve the memory of Confederate soldiers and where they fought, even though Robert E. Lee, an instrumental Confederate figure, opposed that idea. Notably, the majority of these statues were put up in cities across the South during the re-emergence of the KKK, a group the Daughters supported, during the implementation of Jim Crow laws, and during the Civil Rights era. In some cases, they were put up to intimidate black Americans.
They were erected purposefully to send a strong message to all who walked in the shadows about who was still in charge in this city.
Let me tell you how naive and ignorant and stupid I was. I had just kind of assumed, like, oh, well, yeah, the Confederate monuments, they were probably put up directly after the war was lost, and they probably did it, just to commemorate and be like, oh, hey, my grandpa died in the war, or my uncle died, and hey, here it is. Here's a leader in the Confederacy or whatever. And by the way, that's the narrative, that's the thing that people on the far right who support these statues, that's the argument they make, or that's the one they want you to believe. They want you to believe that. Even if it's like somebody like fucking Richard Spencer makes this point on, when he's on camera. Now, again, he's open with his bigotry in many ways. Clearly, he wants a white ethno-state, but he'll say, like, no, this is about heritage. That's why we want to preserve our history. We don't want to erase history. It's about our heritage. That's what this is all about. It's educational. Again, that's not a very good argument because, that they don't have statues to Nazis in Nazi Germany. Say, it's our heritage, our history. We don't want to erase our history. It's educational. But no, they don't do that because they say what these people stood for was wrong. But I'm so naive that I actually kind of bought the argument that it was just, hey, no, just commemorate, and it was just because my uncle was a Confederate soldier or whatever. No. It turns out these were erected years later, mostly during the Civil Rights Movement, or, earlier during Jim Crow, and it was put up specifically to intimidate the black population and let them know, hey, just so you know, look who's still boss around here. The white majority. The whole purpose was to do that. Now, so you might say, well, no, I don't think that's true. Okay. Did you know that there are still some states that celebrate Robert E. Lee Day on the same day that we celebrate Martin Luther King Day? Come on, man. Come on. If that doesn't make it click for you, nothing will. Nothing will. Because that's not an accident. It's not like, oh, we're just doing it for heritage and not hate. So, oh, look, we're celebrating Robert E. Lee's birthday. No, they do it on Martin Luther King Day specifically as a fuck you to the civil rights movement. Specifically as a fuck you to Martin Luther King. They say, oh yeah, well sure, some people say Martin Luther King's a hero. Other people think Robert E. Lee's a hero and what he stood for was really the right set of values. So guys, it's not all, it's all a coincidence. It's all about heritage and not hate. If you're bringing up the statues and you're doing it during Jim Crow, or you're doing it during the Civil Rights Movement, which, by the way, is when the modern Confederate flag came out, too. It was specifically as a fuck you to the Civil Rights Movement to say, yeah, no, we're the new Confederacy. If that's the context in which it came up, it is not about heritage and culture and don't erase our history. It's about we agree with the Confederacy. That's who we agree with. And we want to let people know who's boss. And hey, if you're a black person and you go 2 blocks from your house and you see a statue of a Confederate soldier who fought to continue your ancestors' enslavement, yeah, we want that fear to be struck in you when you look at that. We want you to look at that and go, ugh, I'm not sure I like that. That's the whole point. So don't be a sucker, man. Don't pretend it's something it's not, okay? And you want to have a statue or a monument or whatever on your private property. You want to fly a fucking Confederate flag on your private property. Nobody can stop you. Nobody's going to tell you can't put up your own little thing of Robert E. Lee or whatever. You have every right to do that in America. What we're saying is don't do it on public property. That's taxpayer funded, and you are quite literally asking Black Americans to pay to keep up a symbol of their own oppression and enslavement. So, I mean, that's horrendous. Yeah, give me your money and I'm going to use it to put up this statue, maintain this statue that represents the side of the army the side of the war, I should say, that wanted to keep your ancestors enslaved. That's fucking crazy. So that's the history of Confederate monuments in the country. And still at this late date, I'm apparently super naive and I didn't really realize the whole purpose of it was to say, fuck you to the civil rights movement, fuck you to Black Americans, and to say, we're still boss here.